Here's something most investors miss. It's not recklessness that costs people money. It's being late. Big shifts start quietly in policy meetings and regulatory rooms, long before they hit the headlines. Right now, the AI build-out is driving massive spending in energy, data, and infrastructure. There is a way to potentially benefit from that surge without betting on a single tech stock. To get the full breakdown, visit planwithoxford.com. Again, that's planwithoxford.com.
Welcome back to the Danielle Gill Show. I am really excited for today's show because we are going to be talking none other than Dinesh, our favorite guest. And we will have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about what has been happening with terrorist attacks in the U.S. Caused by Muslims and Iranian sympathizers. We're also going to talk about some of the recent accusations, I guess you can say, from Candace Owens hurled at Erika Kirk. This is the Danielle Gill Show. I am delighted to welcome our guest today, Dinesh. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Just got back from a long trip to our old neck of the woods, namely California. Always makes me wonder why we left. It's always so nice.
It is. It's a great place with weather. Okay, questions I thought we could start with today is we have seen a rise in terrorist attacks in the U.S. We've seen multiple Muslim or ISIS sympathizers. They have killed Americans. We've seen a couple examples of this all occurring recently. What do you make of that?
Well, let's go through the incidents. There are three that come to mind just from the last few days. The first one was in New York, right outside the mayor's mansion. There were these two guys, and they were Muslim radicals, and they were trying to detonate a bomb. This was apparently as a strike against a protest organized by Jake Lang. Jake Lang is one of the January 6th guys. He's a very prominent, a little bit of a provocateur. But nevertheless, the attack was against, a peaceful demonstration that Jake had organized, and so that was incident number one.
Mm-hmm.
Incident number two is today at Old Dominion University. Apparently, a Muslim activist goes into an ROTC classroom and shoots the instructor. And apparently, according to reports, was shouting, Muslim slogans, Allahu Akbar, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the same day, you have the Bloomfield, Michigan attack at a Jewish synagogue. So all of this, I think, is an indication that we are not just dealing with a Muslim problem over there somewhere. There's some people who say, well, we should stay out of the Middle East because if we do, we will be okay. Just let's tend to our own yard or our own house, put our own house in order. The problem is that maybe partly as a result of the Biden, open border policies, a lot of these terrorists are already here, and it's not as if they need an excuse or a provocation. So, think about it. This is what was passing through my mind as I was reading these reports. These guys, they know they're going to either get caught or they're going to get shot, and there's a good chance they're going to be killed. Yeah. In the Michigan case, in the New York case, they apprehended the guy, but in one of the incidents today, the guy was killed, and so the perpetrators know this in advance, and they're apparently willing to do it. So Can you imagine if you take this mentality, these types of people, and put a nuclear bomb in their hands? They would not hesitate to use it. And so course. We have trouble coming to terms with that, really believing it, because it seems to us it's so crazy. Who would do that? Think of all the people they'd be killing. But no, these people are, in a sense, you could say, made from a different mold or cut from a different cloth. And their motives are different and they think differently.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs, then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stock and bonds portfolio and recommended up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 800-992-2255 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 800-992-2255. That's 800-992-2255 or visit LearAlex.com.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about the fact that we have imported a lot of these radical ideologies. We've imported a lot of people who are terrorists, terrorist sympathizers, and we have to deport them. We have to send them home, get them out, because a lot of people are raising concerns about these sleeper cells. They're saying, what if they get activated and all of this? And so we're seeing these terrorist attacks. But what do you think about the fact that I'm sure Iran has thought of this ahead of time, and we are, seeing everything going on in the Middle East right now. We aren't removed from it just because we're on American soil, and of course, we're much safer here than we would be if we were abroad right now. But even so, we're seeing these attacks.
Well, we're seeing the whole Muslim sensibility showing itself more in this country, I think in somewhat alarming ways. I don't know if you saw just very recently, I only saw today, the social media video where Mamdani is sitting with a bunch of his supporters and staff. Well, the way that they're doing it is, first of all, they're all sitting on the ground.
Yeah, basically
on a kind
like
of a
they're
carpet.
Arabic or something.
Yeah, then they appear to be sharing some sort of halal Muslim food. It apparently is the end of a fast. And so you look at that scene and you say, well, this feels like we are like in Jordan or Bahrain. And yet this is the mayor of New York.
Yeah.
And so now, again, if you were to if the terrorist incidents weren't occurring, if you didn't have this kind of violent jihad, then you could say, well, look, this may be a little strange, but this would be no different, for example, from, a group of Sikhs or Hindus or some other group. Maybe this is something that is a little peculiar, multiculturalism of a sort we don't really want here, but it wouldn't be scary. It wouldn't be terrifying. It would just merely be strange and different. But when you put it in the context, when I see the mayor of New York sitting on the ground serving Muslim food, my mind flashes back to like 9/11. And so it's hard for me to disconnect those two images from my mind. And the very site or venue of 9/11, you now have a Muslim socialist running New York and clearly taking it more on the road to Islamification. So the radical Muslims, I don't think are representative of all Muslims. I wouldn't say that all Muslims are like that or all Muslims are dangerous, but I would say that radical Islam comes out of the soil of Islam. What else is motivating the radical Muslims if not Islam itself?
What do you think about the fact that when Mamdani was running for mayor of New York, a lot of people said, oh, you're going to be like an AOC, you're going to be kind of a radical socialist, you're kind of cool and that sort of thing. But I think some of us saw that there was this element of he is more radical. He does have more of it's not even just the fact that he is Muslim, but it's that you can tell he really does sympathize with very extreme views. And we saw that his wife liked various posts that were pro-Hamas. And when confronted about this...
And pro-October 7.
Yes. And pro-October 7, then when he was confronted about it and said, well, she's a private citizen. But then I think to myself, well, even so, though, why do you even have these views? Why do you even believe this? And so that is, I think, quite shocking that someone who is mayor of New York or married to the mayor of New York would have those views, like those things on social media, and be mayor.
I would not be shocked if those were also Mamdani's views. Now, he is politic enough to know I'm not going to campaign on that. I'm not going to say that. But nevertheless, generally you'll find that if views are common inside of a home, they're shared by the husband and the wife. It's typically not the case that, Mamdani's wife is saying, "Oh, I really love October 7th." Mamdani's like, "What do you mean? How dare you?" Mamdani's probably saying something like, "Well, listen, don't say that out loud. Of course, I agree with you." This is the kind of wink we saw between Barack Obama and Michelle. Michelle would say things like, "I'm ashamed to be an American." And obviously, Barack agreed, but he wouldn't say it, and he wouldn't say it that way. He might say it in a more sort of academic way, like America has done a lot of wrong in the world, and we need to have a sense of accountability. So this is, I think, what's going on, and it shows you that the left, if they think that they are just getting a Muslim AOC, no, they're getting something entirely different. These the Islamic radicals have their own agenda. They will not be content until that agenda is fully implemented. And if the example of Iran is to be looked at, you had a kind of left-wing Islamic alliance that overthrew the Shah. But then the radical Muslims crushed the left, actually killed the left. And so that alliance ended up with you could say, the green devouring the red.
Yeah. And of course, AOC is quite radical. I think she is just as radical as Mamdani, but I just think that the level to which she is trying to go to throw October 7th, for example, it's just so crazy. I mean, even a lot of the people who are, I guess, pro Hamas, they try to distance themselves from the October 7th situation and then act like, "Oh, it's all about it." But of course, if you have October 7th, I mean, how do we have any common relatives? Really don't. How do you think people will feel when they can read the book?
Well, October 7th and 9/11 are, in a certain sense, very much the same thing. Now, obviously, October 7th was in Israel, 9/11 was in New York, but there's a close resemblance between those attacks. They were both attacks that were surprise attacks. They were planned quite diligently in advance. They were attempted to strike at the very morale of the society, change the way life is lived in America and in Israel. And Israel is a much smaller society than America, right? They've got 10 million people. We have over 300 million. So we're 30 times bigger than Israel. And that's a way of computing the magnitude of the October 7 attacks, because 1,000 people killed, well, you have to multiply by 30. That would be like the United States losing 30,000 people. In reality, we lost 3,000 or 3,000 thereabouts in 9/11. So October 7th proportionately was even worse than 9/11. But I think, I look at both as representing a certain type of Islamic, barbarism in the modern era. It is people who will stop at nothing and don't draw traditional distinctions between combatants and civilians. In a way, the more civilian carnage that they do, the happier they are.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs, then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stock and bonds portfolio and recommended up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 800-992-2255 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 800-992-2255. That's 800-992-2255 or visit learalex.com.
Right. Yeah, well, let's shift conversation a little bit because you have a new show, which is great. Everyone needs to make sure they go check it out, of course, on this channel, Dinesh. And we just did a really fascinating episode about Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Erika Kirk. Of course, people have heard about the some of the accusations Candace Owens has made, and she's been doing a series called Bride and Charlie. So your recent show was called Charlie's Angels. Is that right? Charlie's Angels?
Charlie's Angel.
Angel. And went into what could possibly be motivating Candace? What is really going on between Candace and Erika? And I thought your analysis on this was really fascinating. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, do you think Candace actually has an issue with Erika? Is it more with Charlie? I thought your analysis there was really interesting.
Let me frame it a little differently than I did in the show by talking first about Shakespeare's Othello. And I think this is relevant because you have this figure in Shakespeare, Iago. Very odd character, by the way, in Shakespeare, because Iago is a rare Shakespearean character because he's very one-dimensional. He is, you could almost say, as one of our mutual friends likes to say, pure evil, right? Iago is pure evil. He's motivated by a single wicked motive, and that motive happens to be envy. In a famous line that I quote in the show, and I've quoted to you know it well, it's Iago's line, often attributed to Othello, but no, Iago says, saying this about Cassio, he had the daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. So, number one, I do think that this is part of what is galling Candace. She is outraged that Charlie, in a sense, not only ended up with Erika, but in a sense pushed Candace away and ultimately pushed her out of Turning Point altogether. And from Candace's point of view, this is an outrage because Candace sees herself as like, a special creation of the universe, almost like a celestial being. She thinks Charlie is like that. She even talks about how both of them have like extraterrestrial intuitions and they know things other people don't know, and they, being so great, they both suspect that their life is in danger, and maybe she thinks they both have a sixth sense. I don't really know, but so she's thinking we're the two special ones that have kind of found our way on this planet, and we found each other, and then whoa, Charlie ends up with this, plebeian, pageant girl who is, from Candace's point of view, you could almost say a commoner here in the sense of lacks the kind of amazing talent that Candace attributes, to herself. Now, the analysis so far doesn't explain what is it about Candace's theories, which I think on the face of it, some of them are very outlandish, very wacky. They involve Egyptian planes, they involve the Macrons, more recently the Freemasons. And so there is almost a bottomless pit of peculiarity here. But you have to try to say, why are people kind of fascinated by this? A lot of people, right? Because they want to watch. And I think I have a theory for that as well. And the theory is this. If we come back to Othello, the public truth about Othello, the man, is different than the private reality. The public truth about Othello is he's a great man. He's a war hero. He is well revered, not just accepted, but revered in Christian Venice. And he's untouchable. He's married the most beautiful woman in Venice, Desdemona. She adores him. So the question then becomes, how can Iago possibly disrupt this? Why would there be even any suspicion of infidelity? Desdemona doesn't even turn her head to anyone else. But see, this is the public mythology of Othello, that he is untouchable. He is an exemplar of Venetian virtue. But Othello knows, but Iago knows something about Othello that is not publicly acknowledged. Othello is an outsider. He's black. He's a Moor. And that is uncomfortable in Christian Venice. Remember, there was no liberalism at the time that, multiculturalism is good. People just said what they thought. And Iago knew that Othello deep down was insecure about his position in Venice. He was insecure that Desdemona really loved him for himself. Othello at one point even says, "I'm so ugly." He says, I didn't even know how I could court this woman, because would I even hold her attention? So Iago knows that there's a vulnerability here that Iago can exploit. And I say this because I think that what happened with Turning Point after Charlie's assassination is a sort of public mythology developed around Charlie and around Erika. And so suddenly Charlie became like JFK after his assassination. He's the greatest president. And similarly, Jackie Kennedy became, part of Camelot. Now, in reality, the Kennedys weren't like that. There was a kind of halos put on them after JFK's assassination. And something similar happened with Charlie and Erika. So Candace knows this. Candace knows that there has to be a real Charlie and a real Erika behind the veil, underneath the halo. And so what she's going to do is she's going to out or expose or ferret out the hidden Erika, the true Erika, very different from the pious Erika that the public sees. So this is, I think, the key to what Candace is up to. She knows that the public realizes there's got to be a real Erika that is not quite the sanitized Erika that we're getting. And so Candace's show is based upon, I'll tell you who that really is. So even if Candace is getting some of the details wrong, her premise that there is a real Erika and a sort of cardboard Erika or Erika on a pedestal, she's right about that. And that, I think, is the motive that drives the interest in her show.
Yeah.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs, then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stock and bonds portfolio and recommended up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 800-992-2255 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 800-992-2255. That's 800-992-2255 or visit LearAlex.com.
Something interesting is, I think, because she did a lot on Erika's background, diving into it. I haven't, seen it all.
You watched some of it.
I've seen some of it, but there are episodes, there are many, I've seen some parts, but I think what's interesting is she'll be like, oh, this was the case with Erika and this year, or something about Erika's mother. And I'm thinking to myself, everyone has relatives, everybody has a person that they were years ago. And I'm not saying that I've analyzed it in great detail, but I'm just saying that it's not like people are born and they're like, wow, this is the person that I am. I'm born this person, and now that I'm in my 30s or however old she is now, I think she might be 37. This is who I am, and that's just who I always was. So of course, any person is going to develop over time, including Candace, I would say. She probably was different when she first got involved in conservatism. She was probably different before she was conservative. Maybe getting married, having kids has changed Candace. I know that most women, once they get married and have kids, are different people. So I'm guessing that would also be the case with Erika. So I just think it's interesting that I'm not sure what the relevance is of a lot of that. And of course, there's the things you mentioned, like the conspiracies or the crazy things in addition. And I'm not sure how that connects to these other things that she's trying to dive into. But I guess, what do you think about the fact that she'll say, I think she recently just brought up something about Epstein, in relation to Erika. So it's like these crazy things. And then it's, biographical kind of details.
In my view, Candace's real target is not Erika. It is, in fact, Charlie. And here's why this, I think, makes total sense. Think of Candace. Now, we're going to go inside of Candace's mind for a minute. From Candace's mind, in her mind, she is like the Earl of Sussex, okay? An aristocrat, a special person. And Charlie is sort of like the Duke of Kent. He is also a special person. The Duke of Kent, instead of partnering with the Earl of Sussex, has in fact chosen to marry, let's just say, a commoner. From Candace's point of view, like a peasant. Okay? Now, who is the Earl of Sussex going to be angry with? The peasant or the Duke? Not the peasant, because Candace knows perfectly well why Erika would pick Charlie. She thinks, obviously, Erika picks Charlie. Charlie's like the prince. I'm talking about Candace's viewpoint now, right? But Candace's rage is at the fact that a fellow aristocrat, from her point of view, Charlie, I won't say dumped her, because it's not that they were actually an item, but nevertheless, they were sort of like, you could say, bosom buddies, or they were soulmates in an ideological sense. Nevertheless, Charlie picked someone who, from Candace's point of view, is utterly like from a lower order. And so her sense of betrayal is going to be toward Charlie, for sure. But Charlie is sort of publicly untouchable. And so Candace's trope, her shtick, is, I was best friends with Charlie. I'm actually going to help Charlie. I'm going to help solve Charlie's murder. You can see, though, the reason I'm suspicious of all this is that the effect of what she's doing is to besmirch the whole, not just Charlie, but Charlie's whole world. She's besmirching Turning Point. She's besmirching all the people around Charlie. She's besmirching Rob McCoy and Mikey McCoy. She's besmirching Tyler Boyer and Andrew Colvett. I mean, all of them are supposedly absolutely rotten from top to bottom and implicated in the worst scandals, which, by the way, start but don't end with Charlie's assassination. Who knows what else they're involved in, according to Candace. You just have to stay tuned to her show to get more scoops on these sort of dirty, rotten scoundrels. So to me, and again, I'm trying to make sense of all this, and I feel that, and you are also in this position over the years, we've gotten to know these people. Now, we're not super close. We're not giving them some sort of a inside scoop, but we know them well enough that we recognize not only the public persona, but the actual person. And so we're in a position, I think, to offer a perspective that's helpful for people to make sense of what is otherwise just an absolute surreal spectacle.
Yeah. And in some ways, it reminds me of the people who, I don't know if you've seen this, but, people who will be like, oh, I actually am Trump's real ally. I love Trump so much that actually my ideology is the real Trump supporter ideology. It's almost similar where Candace is kind of like, I'm so close with Charlie. I'm his true best friend. I actually knew him better than Erika did, or I care about him more than Erika does because, this and that one. In reality, it's kind of like, okay, this is the person he's married to, who he has children with, who's running Turning Point, So I just think it's interesting because some people try to do the same thing with MAGA or, kind of being a Trump supporter, as if it's like, I'm going against you, Trump, because you don't really know Trump, even though you're Trump. And I'm not.
I mean, one of the interesting things that emerged in the Bannon correspondence with Epstein was exactly that. Bannon explicitly said that, DJT, Trump, is not real MAGA. He, Bannon, is MAGA. So Trump is MAGA to the extent that he agrees with Bannon. But Bannon is the standard of MAGA, and Trump is measured by how true he is to these Bannonite principles. Now, again, this is, to a lot of ordinary people, delusional and absurd. But I don't think it's absurd from the point of view of the people who are saying these things. And I think with Candace, part of the appeal of her is that she conveys a certain kind of authenticity, so that if she says these ridiculous things, I don't think people sometimes will say of Tucker, he is the reason people will say very often Tucker's being paid off. Now, I have no evidence that he's being paid off, and I never say that, by the way, about Tucker. But people will say he's being paid off because when they look at Tucker, they're like, they don't get the sense that Tucker, by and large, is artfully crafting whatever he says. But nobody would say of Candace that she's being, quote, paid off, because what she's saying is so unique and bizarre, and like it has Candace written all over it, that you don't have any doubt that this is in fact what Candace thinks. I mean, it could very well be that she needs to be taken out in a straitjacket, but nevertheless, this is what she thinks.
Yeah, I'm sure she does. So who knows? Well, thanks for coming on the show and offering your insight. Make sure to check out his recent episode, Charlie's Angel, from Dinesh. Really fascinating show. We'll dive into it all in much greater detail. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up today's show. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to follow me on social media. I am at Danielle D'Souza Gill. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, X, YouTube, Rumble, all the places. So make sure to like and subscribe to the show. And I'll see you next time.
Let me tell you something. The hedge fund guys already got theirs. Goldman Partners, done deal. Private equity sharks, locked and loaded. They got in early, before the announcement, before the frenzy, before you even knew the game had started. That's how it's always worked. Bloomberg is calling SpaceX the biggest IPO of all time, a company reportedly worth over $1 trillion. There is a way for everyday investors to potentially gain exposure before the public feeding frenzy begins, before the headlines, before the momentum traders, before regular investors get shut out again. But here's the truth. Windows like this don't stay open forever. If you want to see how you can get your hands on this pre-IPO access code, go to earlybirdIPO.com. That's earlybirdIPO.com. Because the biggest gains are usually made before the crowd shows up. Go to earlybirdIPO.com today.